Hello, my name is Karen, and today we are going to bead a cover, beaded glass cover for a glass float. Now the pattern that I'm using is by Bronzepony Beaded Jewelry, and it is called Winter Solstice. I have beaded that pattern here, but as you can tell, this pattern is beaded for an ornament. So the ornament has a hanger to hang it with, and it's also open on the bottom. This beaded cover can come off the ornament. For the glass float, there's no hanger, and the ornament cover will have to be closed up in order to bead a hanger off the top for this to hang by. So we will have to alter the pattern to fit the glass float, because the glass float is also a little bit bigger in diameter. Plus we will have to close in the bottom of this pattern, and then also we're going to make longer dangles. So let's get started. Okay, the first part of this pattern, we need to bead 6 of these design elements that will go around the float. So to do that, we are going to be beading with some blue Superduos, some white Superduos, some 11 rounds, and some size 11 Demi rounds. Now the pattern calls for 15-0 beads, which I don't have. So I am using these size 11 Demi rounds. Now you can use 15-0 beads if you have them. Then we're also using some 4mm bicones and a 8mm chaton. So to start, we're going to pick up with our needle 11-0, a white round Superduo, another 11-0, a Superduo, 11-0, Superduo, 11-0, and a Superduo. You're going to have 4 white Superduos and 4 11-0s on your bead. Feed them down towards the end of your string. And I think the easiest way to do this is to lay them down kind of flat, and then feed your needle up through that first bead that you put on your string and all the way through all the other beads. Hang on to that end string and then pull your needle through. Pull your thread all the way through. Okay. And pull that tight. And then I like to secure it with a knot. Sorry about that. I like to use my tweezers to grab the string and pull it tight. So this is what we have so far. We're going to take our needle and sew through some of these beads just to reinforce. Come up through that bottom hole on the Superduo. And now we're going to sew up through the top hole on the Superduo. Now you can turn your work and you can work around this way or that way. It doesn't matter, whatever you're comfortable with. Next step is we're going to pick up an 11-0, a white Superduo, a blue Superduo, a white Superduo, and another 11-0. And you're going to sew that through the top hole of the next Superduo. And that's what you have. And you're going to continue that all the way around until you've done it 3 more times. So again, a 11-0, white Superduo, a blue Superduo, a white Superduo, and an 11-0. And up through that next top Superduo, pull it tight, and repeat. One more time. And this time, you're going to sew through that top hole in the Superduo, plus the 11-0, and then the bottom hole on the next Superduo. Pull that snug. Now you're going to sew through the next 2 Superduos on the bottom hole, and then come up through the top hole on that Superduo. So you're coming out this Superduo right here. So now we're going to add a Superduo. You're going to sew it, go through the blue, top hole of the blue Superduo, and you're going to add that Superduo there. Pick up another white Superduo and sew up through the top hole of the next white Superduo, and that's what you have. The next step, we're going to use our 11-0s, our 11-0 demi rounds. So I'm picking up an 11-0 demi round. It's clear, so you can't really see it very well. Our 4mm bicone, and another 11-0 demi round. And the reason I'm using the 11-0 demi rounds instead of an 11-0 round bead is because I found that since I don't have the 15-0 round beads, the 11-0 right here would make it too bulky. So the 11-0 demi round will work in place of the 15-0. Okay, so we're going to pick up a white Superduo, sew it through the top hole of the blue Superduo, another white Superduo, and sew it through the next top hole of the next Superduo. Pull that nice and tight. Then we're going to pick up our 11-0 demi round, our bicone, and semi-round, and sew it through that top hole of the next Superduo. Sometimes you do need to check your Superduos to make sure that the holes are all open, because sometimes they get clogged just like that last one, and I was able to clear the clog by pushing the needle through the other side. Okay, pick up another white Superduo and another one. And then your demi round, bicone, and demi round. Now you can use other beads in place of this demi round if you want, or this bicone. It's up to you what you want to use. On that last one, you're going to sew through that top hole of this. Now the next step is we're going to add another Superduo right here. So we're going to sew through the holes on those Superduos, pull your needle through, sew up through the top hole on that Superduo, pick up another white Superduo and sew it in place, and closing up that little end of the, could be a snowflake, kind of looks like a snowflake. Then we're going to sew through those bottom holes again. All the way through to the other side. Pull it nice and tight. And then you're going to sew through those beads, because you're going over to, sewing your way over to this next little section over here. Okay. Now you want to sew up through that Superduo. Pick up your another white Superduo and sew it in place. And you're going to repeat that until you have these other two filled in. Last one. Okay, so that's what we have so far. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add this piece up here on the top of this one. So to do that, we need to sew through those bottom holes again, and this is going to get very tight from the thread going through so many times. And you're going to sew through the top of that bead and the bottom of the top bead. Okay, then you're going to sew through the top of that top bead. Now we're going to pick up a Superduo. Kind of hold it in place however you can, and then you're going to sew through the top. You want this to come all the way down. Okay, then you're going to pick up a blue Superduo and then a white Superduo. Now with the white Superduo, you're going to sew through the next hole and then sew through that bottom hole on the top bead. Pull it tight, and then through the bottom hole on that first bead you just added, so that you have that. Sew through the holes on all three of those, top one, bottom hole, top hole. Now we're going to add another white Superduo. And again, you're going to sew through that top hole. Pick up another Superduo, sew through the top blue hole, so that it looks like this. Then you're going to pick up another Superduo, sew through the top bead hole on that Superduo, pull that tight, and then you're going to pick up one more Superduo and sew it through that top bead to close off that. So that closes off that. Now we have to go back down over to add this bead over here. So I'm going to sew through that bottom hole and through the top blue one and the bottom right one right here. Pull your thread tight, pick up your last Superduo, pull the string all the way through, hold the bead in place, and you're going to sew through that bottom hole on the Superduo, and then through the bottom hole on the Superduo right there. Okay. Now you want to work your way through down to the middle of the beads. And this is where it's going to start getting tight because of all the string that's been sewn through all those beads. So you want to just sew down until you get to these beads down here in the middle. You want to sew through, down through this top bead. Oops, my string came off. I'm also going to trim this string because it's just being a nuisance. Running short on thread. I hope I have enough here. Now sew down through that bottom bead. Down through this bottom bead. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to have enough thread. Okay, so Since I didn't start up with enough thread, I'm going to have to add more thread. So I'm just going to sew this through here, tie a knot. Okay, got more thread added. So next, we're going to build the cage that's going to hold our chaton bead in place, because as you can tell, there's no hole in it. So the first thing we're going to do is add this row of beads right here. So we're going to pick up 5 11/0 rounds. You want to be coming out of the top of these Superduos in the first part of the beading that we did, and you're going to sew through the top hole of the Superduo. Only the Superduo, not the 11/0 next to it. Okay, pick up 5 more 11/0. And you're going to sew through the next top hole on the next Superduo. And they're going to make these little loops. Okay, sew through the top hole of the next Superduo. Pull it taut, and one more set of 5 11/0 into that last Superduo that we started with. Okay, so you should have 4 sets of these little loops. For the next step, we're going to sew up through the first 2, actually the first 3 11/0 that we added on that first loop. You're coming out of that middle 11/0. And we're going to add 6 11/0 Demi rounds and sew through the middle, the 3rd bead of the next loop that we just added. So pick up 6 of these Demi rounds, and now here in the original pattern they used 15/0 for this, but I don't have 15/0, and I could have used a white, a different color of Demi-O, but I thought I would use the more clear ones because then you would be able to see that blue chaton bead better. Wouldn't be blocked by the colored bead. So you're going to pick up 6 more 11/0 Demi rounds, go through that 3rd bead from that next hoop, 6 more Demi rounds, that 3rd bead, and 6 more Demi rounds. And you're going to sew through the 3rd bead that you started with Okay, so now you have like a little cage to put your chaton in. So you're going to set that chaton in that little cage you just built and pull it. This can be kind of tricky sometimes. Pull your string tight, and then you're going to sew through all of those demi rounds again, just the demi rounds. Oops. You'll probably have to hold that chaton in place while we're doing this so it doesn't fall out. And I like to go around this a couple times and pull your string taut as you're doing it to secure that chaton in place. One more time, I think. Okay, make sure that's nice and tight. You don't want that bead to fall out. And then I'm going to sew through and make a knot. Oops, my needle came off. Pull that nice and tight. And then you're just going to sew your thread down through your beads and secure it in place. But that's pretty much it. And you're going to need 6 of these for our beaded cover. Okay, now that you have 6 of this Winter Solstice element made, we will start on the bead cover. And we'll start at the top. Now, on the one that I made from the pattern, we're going to start with this top circle here. And in the pattern, she is using rondelles. I am just going to use some 8/0 clear beads because you're really not going to see that top round row. And I'd rather save my nice beads for the parts of the beaded cover that you are going to see. I also do not have enough of those rondelles for the whole beaded. It takes 150, it says, so I'm going to use my 8/0 clear beads for this next step. So you want a lot of string. I did 3 arm lengths. You can do more if you're comfortable with working with more. I think 3 arm lengths is a lot to deal with. And you can always add on more thread as you need it. And again, I'm using my 6-pound fire line. You can go 8-pound if you want, or stronger. But this is what I have in my stock, so this is what I'm using. I put a stop bead tool on the end of my string. You can also use a bead to make a stop bead. So for this pattern, for the top. Make sure these beads are all in here. We're going to do a 8/0 clear bead around silver bead, and then another 8/0 clear bead. Then we're going to add 2 Superduos. You're going to repeat that 6 times. We want 6 sets of that on your string. So the clear, the silver, the clear, and 2 Superduos. You can use whatever color round acrylic bead you want, whatever color you're doing your project. I just chose to use round silver beads. So that's 4. 5. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do you see a mistake? I see a mistake. Right there. I picked up 2 silver beads instead of 1. So I'm going to have to, and this happens sometimes, no worries. Just take those off. And rethread them. Ugh, goodness. Maybe I should start this video over. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You want to let that go down towards the end of your string where your stop bead is. And you want to thread your needle back up through all those beads. I find it easier to lay them straight and just make sure you go through every bead. Pull your string all the way through. I call it string, thread. Thread is the right term. Now, I don't need this long of a tail here, so go ahead and pull that. Okay. Now, I'm going to take my stop bead tool off and tie a knot. Pull that nice and tight. I like to use my pliers to hold the one end and pull. Now this long string is going to get in the way, so I'm going to go ahead and trim it. So we have the top of our bead cover. So you're going to thread your needle. Just work it down a couple. I would work it down to this next one here. Hopefully I didn't pull it too tight. Pull your string through. You want to go through this Superduo and then sew up through the top hole of the Superduo. And then you can turn your work so that you're working around that way. Unless you're left-handed, and then you can work around that way. Whatever way you're comfortable with working. I don't think it matters. Okay. So the next step is to connect this with here. You're going to sew add-on beads, 5 beads, sew through the middle, and then up another 5 beads. Now, because I'm doing a float, and I want my beads to hang down a little bit lower so that you can see them more, I'm going to add more than 5 11-0 beads here. So I'm going to pour some 11-0s on my mat. This is just a beading mat. It really helps to bead your, pick up your needles easier. So I've got my little round circle with my thread coming out through the top of this Superduo here. And the pattern says to pick up 5 beads. But I want my bead to hang down lower on the float, so I think I'm going to try 5 more. So let's start out with 10 and see if that's going to be enough. So I've got 10 11-ohs. And then you're supposed to sew through this top 11-oh on one of our beaded elements. Pull the string through. Now this is just a test. I may end up taking this off and adding more beads if I think it needs to be longer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you're going to sew through this 11-oh on the inside. I mean this Superduo on the inside, so that it connects like that. Now I want to test this on my float to see if it's going to hang down far enough. I think that will work. We kind of want this element to be sort of in the middle of the float. So 10 beads will work on each side. So our next step is between this 11-oh and this 11-oh. We're going to pick up a clear 8-oh, I didn't get my ginkgo beads out. Isn't that pretty? This is a ginkgo bead. It's got a set of holes on each side of the bead. So with our 11-oh, clear 11-oh I'm using, you're going to sew down so that the pointy part is facing up. Just like that. And then we're going to pick up 11-oh, an 8-oh, and then 11-oh. Oops. And sew it. It's going to lay across the top of that ginkgo bead and sew down through that next hole on the ginkgo bead. So pull your string through and don't get caught on everything. Sorry, messed up my whole set here. Okay. Make sure I'm in the camera here. So this is what we have. An 8-oh, the ginkgo, 11-oh, 8-oh, 11-oh. So now we're going to add another 8-oh, and we're going to sew through the next top hole, the hole of the next Superduo bead. Pull your string through. Okay. And you're going to repeat this all the way around. So we're going to pick up 10 11 O's. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Make sure you have 10. You're going to pick up your next element, beaded element. Pull your string through that top Superduo and then pick up 10 more 11 O's. Make sure you have 10 beads. Pull that all the way through. Sew up through the next Superduo. Okay. Do you know what I just did? Maybe I didn't. Let's see. The other thing you want to make sure is that you are sewing your element on facing the right direction. So you don't get them all sewn on and find out one of them's upside down. So just make sure that they're all facing with your chaton facing up. Okay, so we're going to continue on. Pick up our 8-0, our chaton, $11.0, $8.0, and $11.0. So down through the ginkgo. Did I say chaton? Sorry, ginkgo. And 8-0, and then through the top hole of the next Superduo. Okay. And repeat that all the way around until you have all 6 of our beaded elements connected. Okay, we're going to attach the last element. So I'm picking up my 10 11 O's. Sewing through the top of that. Element bead, 10 more. Through that top Superduo hole. And then our last ginkgo. And now you're going to sew up through that last the top hole of the Superduo next to. And this is what we have. So far. Now we'll move on to our next step.